Hi there, Matt Gemmell here, and this is another video about e-ink devices. I'm super into these things, and I am thus on a bunch of communities, Facebook groups, subreddits, and so on. And the questions I most often see are about, obviously, which device a person should get when they're just getting into these things. And people tend to focus on specific features and to have certain preconceptions about what they'll need. I think a more useful way to think about these things is in terms of their design ethos, really. And I think that broadly there are really two categories. There are four big makers in the space in terms of popularity. There's of course Remarkable and Supernote and Boox and Amazon with the Kindle Scribe. Plenty of other makers as well. There's Big Me, and there's the new, what is it, VI Woods AI tablet or something like that. There's lots of them. But those four, Supernote, Remarkable, Boox with an X, and Amazon with the Kindle Scribe, are definitely the main options that people are going to be aware of. And I do think they fall into these two main categories and one little niche particular subcategory in terms of the design ethos. So, I mean, spoilers ahead of time, that little third subcategory is definitely the Kindle Scribe, which is something that's clearly been designed starting from a Kindle. Amazon's kind of thought, what's the most lightweight in terms of its impact on the user experience way that we can integrate a notepad functionality into a Kindle. And that's what the Kindle Scribe is. It's a big, beautiful Kindle with a reasonably simple notepad functionality added on to it. It's gaining new features all the time. It's a beautiful device. It's got fantastic writing experience and feel. The pens are fantastic. But functionally it is a Kindle with an added writing experience, and that's very much how it's marketed. You can tell a lot about the design process of a product by how it is marketed in most cases. If you just want a Kindle that's big and that you might want to occasionally make notes on or keep a diary on or something like that, and you're used to the Kindle user experience, obviously you need to be thinking about the Scribe. But if you have a less sort of constrained idea or no idea at all of what you want, and you're just trying to figure out what there is and how to make the choice, then this might be a bit more useful, a bit more of a useful way to think about it. So what are those two categories? I think that on one side you've got Boox and perhaps a lot of those other less mentioned manufacturers that I just touched upon earlier. And at the other side, you have got Remarkable and Supernote together. So what's the difference? Well, let's look at both of them. I've been using Boox devices for over a year. I've recently largely moved to the Supernote platform. I very much anticipate staying on the Supernote platform. I've never personally used a Remarkable, but having watched maybe, feels like 1,000 videos on all of the e-ink devices and read the manuals online of all of them, I'm confident enough in terms of where the Remarkable sits in terms of design and who it's aiming for. I mean, you can't really fail to know who it's aiming for because the company does so much marketing and very effective marketing. So Boox is at one side. Let's take a look at a Boox tablet. Put it down here. And I can see it just about there. Hopefully that's visible enough. So this is this happens to be the Boox 10.3 Go or Go 10.3. There are many other Boox devices, and they release more tablets more often than anyone else. This has this notebook interface with this sidebar, and this is going away because the upcoming firmware 4.0, which their very newest devices right now in mid-November 2024 already come with, switches all of them to their other interface, which is the tablet interface. So this notebook interface is going away. The tablet interface is more, as its name implies, more of a typical Android tablet sort of style, maybe a wee bit more of that kind of layout. You've got a bunch of apps, you've got a bunch of widgets for recent notes, widgets for recent documents that you've been reading or annotating. It's, I think there's a dock kind of thing. It's much more of a tablet style, and that's very much what these devices are. These are devices that have sort of started from a design point of view with an Android tablet. An Android tablet is a machine with a fancy modern processor, with a graphics processor as well, probably a decent amount of RAM. It's got an LCD or an OLED display, it's got lots of connectivity, it's got a fancy Bluetooth stack, it's got up-to-date Wi-Fi, it's maybe got a cellular radio and so on and so forth. So a big sophisticated tablet computer like an iPad or whatever. And then they've started compromising downwards, if you will. And the first thing you put on it, of course, to be in this space is an e-ink display. Now, e-ink displays, whilst they are the attractor for people who want one of these devices, they are in some ways a significant compromise compared to a regular backlit high refresh rate display. They, of course, have a much lower refresh rate. They may not have colour at all. If they do have colour, it's going to be a limited palette. They're going to be muted in various ways depending on the colour e-ink screen technology. There can be a degree of visual distortion, sometimes because of the colour layer. If you're using a colour e-ink technology that uses a layer above the black and white, sometimes because of the textured surface for writing as well. They will have a lovely high resolution, particularly the monochromatic ones, and of course not being backlit is a huge advantage. A reflective display is much easier on the eyes, and we as e-ink, you know, enthusiasts love that aspect of it, but it is definitely a huge compromise in terms of coming from a tablet computer. So then you have to keep compromising down. You have to start probably getting rid of the GPU. Boox devices, some of them do have a GPU. You maybe don't have as powerful a processor, and you certainly can't run a full-on modern, highly sophisticated and probably animation heavy, eye candy heavy operating system. So you need to start trimming things down. And of course there's a huge swathe of third-party apps which just won't work very well on an e-ink display, aren't written for it, aren't optimized for it. So you end up with something that at first glance looks like an Android tablet or a generic tablet computer, but with an e-ink display and a whole lot of compromises that reduce the sort of breadth of experience compared to a tablet. And Boox devices very much are as much of an Android tablet as they can be, but with an e-ink display and with e-ink focused features like the writing surface and of course the notepad app and so on. And the other sort of, that's one strand of the sort of design philosophy. The other strand is that they just acquire features from everywhere, you know, inspired by other makers in the same space, inspired by Android tablets in general. Obviously a lot of things taken from stock Android and kept in where it will still work on an e-ink device. And all of this functionality it's added and updated all the time. It's like accreted quite haphazardly in some cases. So what you end up with is devices that have got the broadest functionality and are closest to being tablet computers in general, but the experience is very disjoint and disconnected. It's also extremely options and preferences heavy and menu heavy and sub-menu heavy and so on. The Notepad app's interface bears only the most passing resemblance to the reading Neo Reader app's interface. Things work differently. There are different odd limitations and weird rules about things. If you're making annotations in the memo calendar app thing, you will not have access to the same pen tools and eraser tools and options as in the Notepad app, and so on. So it is a very disjointed, disconnected, kind of multiple siloed experience. And that's what we're used to. That's what we're used to from tablet computers, right? You know, every app is by a different maker, and they all have slightly different interfaces and do things different ways, get different terms, different ways of working. Even first-party apps from the tablet manufacturer have all got very different ways of working, unfortunately. So we're kind of used to that, and it will be familiar, and none of this is meant to say that's a lesser option or a bad option, just that you need to know what you're getting coming in. If what you want is a tablet computer that is instead an e-ink device and lets you write and draw on it while staying as close as possible to the functionality and experience of a tablet computer, then that's what Boox devices are. And perhaps they would be best for you. You'd pick them up in the sense of adapting to them most easily. So that's at one side. At the other side, Boox, remember, starting with an Android tablet, that's the design start point. At the other side, you've got Remarkable and Supernote. And they're very different from the sort of Android tablet side of things, even though, of course, they are tablet e-ink devices with, I think, both of an Android-based, or at least, you know, nominally similar tablet operating system that's running on them. So let's take a look at a Supernote. I've got the wee Nomad with its A6 sized screen, slightly larger than A6. And it looks like this. At first glance, very similar to the Notepad interface on a Boox device or anything else. I mean, it's a place that you write that's got a page template in the background, and it's got a toolbar all the way down. You know, so far so similar. But this thing is a very different beast, because what Supernote and I believe also Remarkable have started with, from a design point of view, is a piece of paper, a physical piece of paper. And that is the ideal, not the tablet computer being the ideal. The piece of paper is the ideal. And what they then start to do is compromise up in terms of functionality. You know, a piece of paper, you want to have multiple different pens. You can't give multiple styluses to people. That would be a pain, and it would get rid of some of the convenience of a digital device. So you need a toolbar to switch pens and to switch erasers and so on. And that's how these devices are designed. They are paper with as few compromises upwards in digital technology as possible, while still retaining a paper-like experience. So the big difference, one of the big differences with Supernote, for example, is that there's no home screen on this thing at all. The closest you get is this little sidebar that drops down. By contrast, on a Boox device, the sidebar that drops down is exactly like, you know, Control Center on an Apple device. It's got all the widgets for Wi-Fi and splitting the screen and hotspots and screen recording and goodness knows what else, loads of stuff. Whereas this little transient sidebar thing is your home screen. You can, of course, view your files, but this is more of a file chooser dialog, a transient interface in itself. The idea on a Supernote, as on a piece of paper, is that you're always in a document. You're always either writing on a piece of paper or reading or annotating on a document, a PDF, an EPUB, a book, whatever it is. So that's a profound difference. You've got the beginning point of a piece of paper, and the Supernote basically, it adds what is useful as an analog to doing something in a notebook. Notebook organization methods and productivity methods like bullet journaling or whatever typically have to contrive a solution for things like indexing and tables of contents and so on, which attempts to overcome the fundamental, or one of the arguable fundamental weaknesses of sequential paged paper notebooks, in that they're not elastic in terms of where the pages lie and where sections lie. That's not true of a digital device. You can reorder pages, you can remove pages without damaging the notebook, and you can link to pages and add pages in and change page templates and so on. There's that plasticity, but it's a plasticity based on the underlying metaphor of paper. So Supernote adds stuff that allows you to do the sort of stuff that you would want to do in a notebook, but taking advantage of the fact that it's a digital device. Like you can erase stuff with a gesture. Boox has a similar thing where just drawing a loop around something will usually be recognized as a selection gesture, and you can scribble things directly out. But as I was saying, you can make things into links and headings. This would be a heading. These are just visual styles of headings. They don't imply hierarchy. And once you've done that, then you've got a table of contents. There it is. You can also apply keywords in the same way, links in the same way. Indeed, you can even turn things into tasks or calendar events, sort of like pulling the text out, recognized. You can make a task or calendar event, and it remains sort of nominally associated with the particular page of the particular notebook that you pulled it from. But this is something that is a device that has a sort of enhanced sheet of paper, whether it's displaying a notebook of yours or a document that you've loaded on, pretty much at all times. And anything else is transient, like jumping to the calendar or email, the to-do app. Atelier is a drawing-focused app with much more artistic tools rather than the writing-focused notebook. And of course the file browser, and it does have a Kindle as well if you don't want to use the built-in sort of reading ability and get access to your Kindle library. You will find, if you're used to tablets, with the normal interface modes of tablets these days, i.e. you're always returning to home and choosing apps from a grid and adding and manipulating widgets to pull information out of your apps to show on your home screen, your regular place where you live, you will find this sort of stark and bare bones, and you might feel sort of like hemmed in and being pushed to focus on your work with all your nice distractions and treats taken away from you until you've finished work for the day. But there are an awful lot of people, myself included, who want this exact thing. They want someone, or something in this case, to help us stay on task and stay focused. And they want a place where they can live within that focus, within that work, whether it be you know, working to earn money or personal work, without any temptations or distractions or too many compromises up towards what a tablet computer or a regular computer is these days, which is not just a multi-capable machine, but it's also a distraction machine of internet access and notifications and messages and emails and movies, music, TV, all of that stuff. There's just no end to it, and the scrolling and all of that stuff. If you're someone who has the preconception that any digital device you use, even for focused writing and reading, must at least give you access to all of those things, that you need the all-in-one, and you just think that you'll discipline yourself into modes of use, then you either want just a tablet computer, get an iPad, get a Galaxy, whatever. But if you really want or need e-ink, say for the health of your eyes, or to deal with migraines or whatever it is, then you really want one of the Boox type Android-y tablet things. But be aware that they come with a burden of discipline and of management. You're going to need to toggle the Wi-Fi off. You're going to need to put it in, you know, notifications silent mode and switch off the volume slider, and don't switch to the web browser apps, and they have all of that. So you're bringing all that baggage right along, and you're going to be tempted to use it. You definitely are. Whereas if you are someone who is in either of the following two positions: one, you're genuinely coming from I love notebooks, or want to love notebooks and paper and pen, but I want it to be digital for all of the conveniences of a shiny toy and searchability and editability and reorganizability and export and all that stuff. Or if you're not coming from a sort of notebooks focused place, but you're coming from a place where you either don't want to or cannot endure the responsibility of disciplining yourself to stay completely on task and stay focused and stay within the moment of work and the conduciveness to clarity of thought that a writing surface brings, then you may not want to come into the e-ink space on the side of something that is as little beneath a full tablet computer as they can possibly make it. You might instead want to come in on the side of something that has been designed starting with paper, and that is a completely intentional design rather than a design of the fullest capability broadly. An intentional design that gives you as much as you might need to stay as close to the general principle and focus of writing on paper as possible, and virtually nothing else. That sort of enforced hand upon your shoulder that nudges you towards the work and the thinking, and also the quietness of it. You know, that's one of the great benefits of working on paper, or a digital version of paper, that isn't really spoken about so much, that it forces you to exist with the work and to slow down, because we can write so much more slowly than we can type in most cases. That's certainly true for me. I can type many times faster than I can write, but also the instantaneous and keyboard-based editability of typing, it makes me hold thoughts in my head for less time, but just before just trying them and just splashing them out there. And I know I can always edit all the time, but when you know you can change and edit and move around so rapidly, what I find that I end up with is a sort of a far higher quantity of less considered output. Whereas if you are sort of compelling yourself to just take that moment, that extra little loop, to do a bit more of the thinking here before it comes out, as has always been necessary with paper, partly because of the slowness of handwriting, partly also, of course, because of things that don't apply to digital paper, like consumption of resources and lack of ready editability once it's on the page and so on. Then what you find is that whereas your pace of output is naturally significantly slower, the output is closer to the sort of end result that you want, or it's more precisely down the path that you need to stay on, rather than all of these constant little diversions and dead ends and junctions and all that stuff. So I think that's a useful way to think about where you might want to come into the sort of e-ink space. You do have considerations that are purely mechanical, like do you need a front light on the thing? Do you need a particular screen, set of screen dimensions? There are concerns of, if you're using it for work, obviously integration with authentication mechanisms and particular apps and all that. And of course you've got to be constrained by these. We don't exist in isolation, taking a tablet into a hermit's hut to right in the middle of nowhere. There is an environment and an ecosystem, a context of use to be considered. So those may well be deciding factors. But all other things being equal, ceteris paribus, I think the most useful way to make the decision is actually to really stand back and look at the sort of design ethos and origin of the devices with respect to yourself, your own nature, how you will use these things realistically, being honest with yourself, and to let that make the decision for you as much as possible. I love this thing, mostly because of how beautiful it is, how it feels in the hand. I do not love the user experience. It is extremely full-featured. Every possible thing you could wish to tweak is there, but is that a good thing? And it's very siloed between reader and the apps and the note-taking experience, and there's a great deal of stuff to twiddle and fiddle with, and that is, that's catnip to me, but that's a bad thing. So I also have other devices, like a big iPad and a MacBook over there and so on and so forth. So it's not like I don't have access to the other things. A phone, how sophisticated our phones are these days. What I really need is something that gives me the friction eliminating benefits of a digital writing device, but which is as much as possible a thing that has been designed to be a digital piece of paper first and foremost and virtually all of the time. And for me, this is, having thrown the pen away there, much more that sort of device than the devices that start on the tablet side. So there you go. That's something to think about. Thank you so much for watching this. As always, I'm Matt Gemmell, and I hope you'll tune in to the next video. Take care.